So we're doing kind of a really hoppy porter, kind of almost a black ale, which I spoke to, I've decided to, if you have a look here, around the carafa, we've got 400 grams of carafa, which is an awful lot of carafa to be using in a beer. The reason I'm using a lot more than I would be doing is because I'm steeping it around 20 degrees, rather than getting any heat to it whatsoever, which is going to extract tannins and get kind of like a horrible harsh grain bitterness, which you don't want in a black ale. We just really want the colour and a little bit of flavour. So now is a little bit bag, ribbon all over the place. That's been in there for about 20 minutes or so. The good thing about cold steaming is you can do it for like one chair. It's about 24 hours, and you just get loads and loads of colour, a little bit of flavour, but you won't get too much harshness. So if you want to make black IPAs, things like that, cold steaming is a good way to go about it. Where's Lewis? There he is. So everyone, this is Lewis. This is an assistant brewer. You might have met him before. He used to work here. He's an assistant brewer at Brewdog now.
Oh, where's his cross?
Cross on his face.
Yeah.
Sorry?
There's a cross on his face.
Oh yeah. That's a good one.
You can get the rest of the books.
We're going to get going with the rest of them now. So we're going to stick the heat on the boiler. The boiler looks definitely not going to trip over. So if we go through this recipe, essentially it's a 50-litre batch. It's an extract of steeped grains recipe. So we're going for about 18 litres, going on the idea that we're going to lose 20% of that from boiling off. So if you want to start, if you want to do a 50-litre batch, start with more because you will evaporate effective about 20%. Anything about that is going to be 20%. The original gravity is going to be just over 1040 to 1044. It's going to finish fairly dry. I might stop it before though, because depending on how the grain bitterness goes, I might want to keep it a little bit sweeter. Just try and balance that out. The ECG regular, puts on 4, so not like a middle of the road kind of pale, not massively hoppy, but not massively sweet either, so it should be just a fairly easy drinking kind of guy. 4.5% I'm going for with that one. We're going with mosaic hops. So mosaic hops are an American variety used in dead pony clubs. So you get, how do you describe mosaic?
Kind of, well, it's very tropical, but it's always kind of berry-ish.
Yeah, kind of blackberries and passion fruits. Nice. So I've measured out those. So in order, in my 4 bowls, I've got the 60-minute edition, 20-minute edition, a 5-minute edition, and a flame out edition. You'll have a look. Huzzah! And these goes here. I'm going to dry hop it as well. So a week into fermentation, chuck in another handful of hops, and just get a little bit more aroma in there, which should be nice. Using Nottingham yeast again, which I've lost. So where? Oh yeah. Lewis has rehydrated that already. Do you want to? We'll get to that in a moment actually. We've got the spray on as well. I've got 1.5 kilos of the lights because you will get this kind of thing. Except you've got a medium one. For yours it's not really going to matter. The reason I went with light was just because I kind of wanted to demonstrate how far a little bit of carafa can go in terms of colour. So obviously this is going to have very little colour to it itself. But as it is, it's looking pretty black already. Got a fair one. So yeah, as that heats up, we'll just go through the first bits of the lecture, that's alright. And then when something interesting happens, we'll stop the lecture and go back to the demonstration. Any questions about the ingredients so far? No? Right. So yeah, malt. As well you know, malt is the source of your fermentable sugars in your beer. So far, that role has been played by your syrup, and it's about to be played by or dry malt extract, which is essentially just a mash that's been very meticulously dried out and then powdered. It's this really, really fine powder. It's weird. It looks like it would be like flour, but it's really, really fine. Don't breathe it in, it's not fun. What is malt? Generally speaking, malt is any cereal grain that's been germinated and then dried. That's the malting process, essentially. In terms of beer, we're talking about malted barley in most cases. So obviously barley is a grass, as is wheat, they're all kind of grasses really. Most grains are. It's the 5th most cultivated crop, which is a fun fact that you can reel off the prize. Just make sure you attribute it to me because I did that fact. The reason it's one of the most cultivated crops is that it's really, really, really hardy. It's pretty much grows anywhere. That's why you've got various versions of beer. Like you've got kind of Western beer, then you've got kind of African beer type drinks, and then South American type things. It's all kind of from the same thing. It's all coming from the fact that you can pretty much do it anywhere, which is good. 3 main kinds of barley. 2-row, 4-row, 6-row, 4-row is irrelevant to us. That's the other shit and all the cow food. Why is that?
I just did not drink that.
It's just rubbish. 2-row and 6-row are the ones we use here. It's about how the grains are arranged around the stems. They're just very different strains. 6-row's got smaller grains, but because there's more material, and ratio-wise, it's a lot more protein in it, which can be good for certain beers. Generally speaking, it's 2-row. 2-rows I consider a little bit better. Yeah. Is that in the way? Okay.
I can see over.
Alright. So malting process, essentially you harvest your grains, separate them, clean them, dry them, and store them in a thing until we get to malting house. You'll steep the whole uncrushed grains for about 48 hours to about 50% more of their initial weight in water. You drain it, then hold them in a brooks, aren't they? Yeah, big weird brooks. So they start germinating. You can tell when they start germinating when the tip of them goes a little bit green and it starts chitting. Chitting, we call it. Once it's done with that, once it's modified, we'll talk about modification in a moment, then it's dried to about 4% of its original moisture, which means you can hold it basically in stasis, as it were, until you rehydrate it in your mash. The chips are removed by tumbling. Another fun fact. So, if you think of like a grain, it's made up of the hull, so hard shell, the endosperm, which is basically little tiny bags of the stuff that you need, and you need various other stuff to get that stuff out, if that makes sense. We've got the row, that's the layer that produces the enzymes that are going to break apart the rest of the endosperm, and then the little shoot, which at the bottom end comes out as looks like chips, but on the inside it's kind of growing at the inside. Don't worry, there's a picture. Here we go. So this is like a little plant bit here. You'll start there, let's say after it's germinated, then you can leave it. If you go to about there, if you process to about there, that's a fully modified grain, which is going to keep most of its enzymes. As that happens, this layer here kind of pumps in loads of enzymes, and if you dry it, the enzymes will stick around. Sometimes you can just destroy all the enzymes, we'll talk about that in a moment. The rootlets at the bottom aren't relevant because we chopped them off. If you left it as it was, it would just be a plant. It would just grow to a new plant. That's the natural process that it would go through. But dehydrating it will kind of pause it in that situation. So you have the enzymes ready to convert all the starches into fermented sugars. The modification level would be how much of that the enzyme is filled up with a little plant. If it's a lot, it's fully modified. If it's not a lot, it's not fully modified. More modified means more enzymes, means more sugars available. Lots of different types of malt, but generally speaking, you can categorize them into those that need to be mashed and those that don't. So the ones that do are your base malts and your kiln and toasted malts. You get to each one separately, so those are really well into your mill. And those are going to be your crystal malts and your roasted malts. All of them kind of bring something completely different to the table. So once we get past this stage onto full grain, it will become kind of up to you which grains you pick and in what proportions to kind of control your beer. Kind of minute levels. Sorry. I've got some pre-boiled water there. This is mostly Buxton water, but this is kind of going to pour some hot water in there. Back to our old friend pre-boiled water because we couldn't carry enough water for us because we're tired and we went out last night. Essentially, the practical difference between the two is that the ones that you do need to match. I kind of dried a little bit slower. We'll go with that now. So, actually, this is important. If you think about a malt's ability to give you fermentable sugars, we start talking about diastatic power there. So things like your base malts and your kiln malts will have a lot more of a diastatic power than, say, the carafe we're using in here, which is kind of basically charred to a crisp. So charred something to a crisp, not many enzymes left over. Not going to get much fermentable sugar out of it. Think about it, the more enzymes, the more sugar, the more fermentable, the higher the diastatic power. Each malt kind of has a measurement on it, and it will tell you how much potential you're going to get from it. So from there you can work out how much of that malt you need to give you that amount of fermentable sugar. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other variables as well. Caramelization and Maillard reactions. It's possibly a step too far to be thinking about it now, but generally speaking, it helps you put together your malt build. Caramelization is thermal breaking down sugars into caramels. So basically, burning shit like caramel, essentially. Maillard reactions are slightly different. It's a reaction between a sugar and an amino acid rather than a sugar and a sugar. That's essentially the kind of browning of the food rather than like caramelization. So like the inside of bread turns slightly brown, that's a Maillard reaction. Cooking chips in the oven is a Maillard reaction. It's important because they bring very different things. So things like your caramel, your crystal malt, that's all caramelization. So you get really sweet toffee flavors. With Maillard, you get kind of more bready, kind of bitty type characters. So a lot of times you'll be kind of wondering which base malts to use. So you're going to be thinking about more Maillard-y. It should be. It makes sense. Right, base malts dried out at a low temperature over a long period of time. Keeps a lot of the enzymes intact. Hold on one second. Generally speaking, they're going to make up the bulk of your beer most of the time, just because it's a really good kind of blank canvas, really high diastatic power blank canvas essentially. Sometimes you get kind of a bit of grainy character to it. It's nice. So things like Marisol Spring Blend, Pilsner malt, you'll always be using most of that. Even in porters and stouts, you'll make up most of that and then use specialty grains on top of that to get you kind of character. But that's where you're going to get bulky fermentability from. Kiln malts are slightly hotter when they're dried. The high temperature stores in the enzymes, blah, blah, blah. They've still got a fair bit of diastatic power, but they've got an awful lot more flavour than just your standard base malts. So things like Munich malt, Vienna malt, biscuit malt. We had a 100% Vienna malt IPA yesterday. It just had a completely different malt character to normal IPAs. Kiln malts can go a long way. Generally speaking, you could use half Pilsner malt, half Vienna malt, and have a really, really kind of Vienna-y character to it. They're really useful. Some people use them for the bulk of their grain. They're rich people who can afford lots of grain, but really they don't need to use that much. But yeah, I can imagine that'd be nice. The yeast is going a bit nuts.
Yeah, it will be.
Too nuts. Specialty malts. This is the other main family. These ones even higher temperatures. Less than what temperature is it? All that water. Thank you. Generally speaking, this is where you're going to use much smaller proportions of malts to get a lot more kind of character. So say like you're drinking punk over there, aren't you? There's a little bit of caramel malts in there just to give it a bit more colour and a little bit of kind of caramel sweetness. So anyone drinking anything darker, that's inconvenient. You've got the 5 AM there, that's got a lot more kind of grain on it. It kind of builds up the malty flavour. You don't need to mash these grains because essentially you don't need the enzymes, so you don't need to put it in the right condition for the enzymes to do their thing, which is why we're using Cara Red and Carafa. Carafa's slightly different. You can split that again into crystal malts and roasted malts. Carafa's a roasted malt, Cara Red's a crystal malt. Crystal malts, I'm talking about caramelization here. So in the drying process here, you're breaking down the sugars as you dry them. So if you smashed up a bunch of crystal malt, you will actually find like tiny little specks of kind of caramel in it, which is why it tastes so much like toffee. Pretty good, really. Especially if you're kind of if you're making a porter or a stout, crystal malts are really good because they kind of bridge the gap. So you don't want like just all kind of burnt, kind of toast. You want something to kind of bridge the gap in the middle. So rather than just have like bread on one side and then really burnt shit on the other side, kind of bridge the gap in the middle, so you can make like a more rounded and more characteristic. You'll see them all with little numbers next to them. That's degrees Lovibond, which, to be honest, I'm not sure what that measures apart from colour and sweetness. Essentially, I'm not sure what it's measured in. Do you know what it is? I don't know. Right. So essentially, the higher the number, the darker it will be. So you can get 140. 140 is the highest I've seen, which is really dark. Rule of thumb, darker crystal, the less magnetic surface will be. So the darker it is, the more useless it is. Essentially, we've got caramel, caramunic, carapils, crystal, light crystal, dark crystal, cara red. You can basically just take any malt and put cara in front of it, and there will be a version of it. Cara biscuit. You think cara biscuit? Cara biscuit's the same. Roasted malts are much, much darker ones, so things like your Carafa, chocolate, amber, they have no diastatic power whatsoever. They're essentially just the characteristics of the beer. Basically like oven temperature, so rather than drying them out, you're essentially just heating them, which is all well and good. Non-diastatic malts are also known as. They can impart some pretty harsh flavours. That's one of the reasons we're cold steeping Carafa rather than hot steeping it, because they've got a lot of tannins in them, there's not a lot of sweetness that comes with it, so generally speaking you just get a big old chunk of grain bitterness, which in some styles is really good, but particularly in this one it's going to be bad. We don't want it to taste super burnt, we just want it to have like a little toasty kind of aspect to it. Should have used a bigger we're coming up to 60. Yeah, right. We're going to stick this guy in now, the Cara Red. Just dunk it in like a tea bag. Actually, I'm going to take the Carafa out now, because again, we don't want to be doing much heat with this. Oh god, that's really hot. I'll survive it. Perhaps. Maybe. You got more water? No. You've got to factor in water loss from your grains as well. So you can go a little bit higher than what it says, the 20%. Obviously, I could just wring it out with that's probably going to separate a lot of tannins. The reason I've done cold steeping is to avoid those, so I don't really want to bring it out. I just remember the tour guide was asking questions about the mash bag things. What do you think of Brewing Bag? Why don't you like it?
I think it's just easy. If you're going to do a mash there anyway, you might as well just mash.
Yeah, we talked about it before, but it's kind of dumb because you've got to lift it out, so you're going to lose half your water that way anyway, and then you're going to want to squeeze it to actually get the sugar out of it, but then you're just going to end up with really, really horrible tanniny, protein-heavy beer. You're going to get troubles. What's it called? Lewis is the guy that I was brewing with when we did the disastrous rye barley wine. Last day ever. Yeah, dark beers, ports and stouts, you roast and malts are absolutely essential for that. How do you use them? Yeah, so steeping you can do a lot of things with steeping. You can do it hot steeping, which is what we're doing with the power end now, because we need a bit of heat to start breaking bits down, to melt those caramels, to get those sugars in there. So we'll give that maybe 15-20 minutes in there. And then by that time, the good thing about steeping in one of these is that we can just hold it at a similar temperature on the way up to boil, rather than have to do a thing and then boil it and then let it go down. Generally speaking, just kind of stop off on the way up. Relatively high. We'll talk, whatever it says about mashing in there, we'll probably just ignore, because we'll be doing the proper mash week after next or week after that. I think it'd probably be better to wait for the word things I'm using. Yeah. Non-barley grains. This is important as well, because again, with homebrewing, the kind of emphasis is on kind of creativity, doing things that people haven't done before, just making like the absolute exact beer that you want to try. So you're going to rely a lot on non-barley grains as well. Obviously, you'll come across wheat beers, oatmeal stout, stuff like that. There's loads of other grains you can use. Yeah, generally speaking, most of them are quite traditional ones, so things like rye, injun, Robin beers. People don't even make Robin beers anymore because no one really likes them. But now you get like rye stuff everywhere, particularly in craft beer. Wheat. So things like ice beer, Berliner Weiss, wit saison lambics. You get a lot of wheat. It's a really, really proteiny grain. So you end up with really, really big, thick, long-lasting heads. So if you want to make like a summer wheat beer with a big head that lasts for ages, use wheat essentially. It can kind of thicken up a beer as well. All of these grains generally come in several forms that, depending on what you want to do with them. So you can have malted wheat, which has diastatic power, so you can use that in your mash rather than just sticking it in at the end or kind of letting it soak. You can't go too high in your grist. You can't make 100% wheat beer, really, because you get issues with the proteins. You need some other stuff in there to kind of thin it out. It's not so good. Flaked wheat is really useful if you end up with really, really low protein, so it's really, really thick. So things like Russian Imperial stouts, barley wines, stick a bunch of flaked wheat in it. You need to cook it first, so basically make a porridge out of it, and then add it to your mash tun. Torrefied wheat is similar. It's a lot sweeter than flaked wheat. You get loads of heavy retention with that. Torrefication is interesting. Come across torrefication? Can we talk about torrefication? It's basically like popcorn. It's really strange. So you end up with like, in a bag, a really big bag, it's like 500 grams in it, it's like useless. But then it just basically just like turns into mush, really long protein mush, which, if that's what you're going for, it's great. Rye, like I said, is being used in loads and loads and loads of styles now. So things like Robin beer traditionally. I love rye. Rye is my favourite of all the other grains. by far. It's really kind of spicy, cinnamony, kind of a bit like a ginger nut. It tastes like a bit like a ginger nut, but in some styles like IPAs or IPAs. I didn't think of that name. But yeah, most new London breweries have a red or IPA, and they're always really good. You do get a lot of issues with rye though. Rye is a really small grain, and the hard material that makes up the husk is really sticky. So you can only use it 10% is about as high as you can go. If you use rice hulls, we talked about rice hulls before, which is just extra hard material. The rye is going to stick in your mash. All the holes are going to kind of become gummed up, and then you're in a spot of bother, really. You can go higher with rice hulls, get more of that spicy character. It just needs a bit more structure, that's the issue, it's too sticky and squidgy. Again, loads of forms. Malted rye, not so high on the diastatic power. In fact, I don't know anyone who tries to use it as much, because again, you get the gumminess and a bit of diastatic power, so there's no point trying to make it 100% rye good, which never happen. Be nice, wouldn't it? Try that one day. Crystal rye is my favourite grain ever. It's so good. I could just, what I do, just sit there and just eat it like popcorn. It's so good. It just makes it it goes really well with kind of American style hops, which I tend to use a lot anyway. It just gives it a really complex spiciness. Even just like a little handful halfway through the mash, will just kind of massively improve your beer. I haven't done a beer. This will be the first one since this one, which I guess we're loosely calling a beer, that I haven't used rye. I was going to use rye, but I thought, no, not this time. Flaked rye is another one that gets rolled through hot rollers, it gelatinizes it, so you get a lot of sugars, but not really fermentable sugars, it's mostly caramelized sugars. It's alright. It's not as good as crystal rye. Nothing is. Crystal rye's better than everything. Oats. You will have an oatmeal stout, presumably. Yeah? Big, thick, full-body beer. You can use oats with those. They're really gummy, but they're surprisingly big grains, so you don't really get stuck matches with them. So they have next to no diastatic power, so if you really wanted to, you could probably make a 100% oat beer. It's fucking horrible, so I don't know how it would. It works really well with stouts. The last stout we did had flaked wheat and flaked oats. We just cooked it up in a pan. It looked like really thick porridge. I'm like, terrible. But then as soon as you put it in, you can just like feel it like thicken up everything, and then once you get to fermentation, it makes like a really silky kind of feel to it. Which is obviously what you want in a stout. The stouts can be quite harsh in terms of flavour, so if you have like a really silky mouthfeel about it, it just makes it much better. You can use like oats so simple, like porridge oats, like the little packets. Don't use the apple and cinnamon flavoured one. That'd be rubbish. You can just stick like the normal flavoured one in. It's got a bit of sugar in there. That sugar will ferment away straight away. There'll be no trace of that, but you will have those grains left in there once you get to fermenting it. Steel cut oats. Sounds really exciting, but it's not. You might as well use cheap kind of red bread kind of oats in it, rather than using these unless you've got to cook them down for about 20 minutes and you've got to hack them up a little bit. You might as well just chuck some red bread in it. Yeah, it's a lot more expensive as well. And that's in Scotland. Rice and corn. How are rice and corn treated in the brew house? With disdain. Rice and corn. I only included this because it's kind of an important adjunct, but generally speaking, at home brewing, you're never, ever going to use it. Generally speaking, they're highly fermentable sugars that you can use without having to treat them at all. So if you're a Carlsberg guy or a Budweiser guy, you're just going to chuck loads of it in because you don't even taste anything to begin with, so it doesn't matter if you add something bland to it, it just stretches your beers. You have to cook them in a cereal cooker, which again, there's no point. I got a bit grumpy when I was writing this bit. It's like fucking rice. Yeah, well, there's a real issue with using corn. Coors uses a lot of corn. Corn tastes a lot like kind of buttery popcorn, which is a mixture of 2 hot flavours, which as a home brewer, once you get used to them, you'll be like, don't want them at all. So I don't know why you'd add something that tastes like that on the off chance that it could be that. You could be like, is that the DMS I'm tasting or is that the corn I'm tasting? It's fucking stupid. I don't know why you do it. It's stupid. Yeah, rice is used with Budweiser. Rice doesn't taste of anything, so neither does Budweiser. Cray! That's that actually, that was a fairly short one. Was that this one left?
Yeah.
What are we going to do with that?
Not really.
Okay, right, what are we at? Right, do you want to take a little break while we wait for it to come out to boil, then we'll get the camera on and just do the things. 85 degrees, it's a good time to add your spray malt. Best way of doing that is using scissors and just kind of getting it straight in there. The more time you have with it hanging over the steamy stuff, it's just going to kind of get all sticky and gummy on there and you're going to end up wasting loads of it. So each bag, stir it in properly. If you've not got one of these yet, you probably should buy this, but like, it's a lot better than a spoon for getting out lumps. No balls, as you'll soon call them. Everyone clear with what we've done so far? Alright.
Spray malt would be in section.
Yes, spray malt is Munchauns who make spray malt, that's just how their brand name for it. Yeah. Yeah, you four are going to argue back against to do this though. My dear, I'll do this though. I really like extract brewing. I think it's good. You can get a brew day done in 2 hours, we could do it in a bar if you really like. The results are not quite as good as they can be with, well actually, nowhere near as good as they can be with all grain. But like, if you just want like 60 bottles of tasty, drinkable home beer that you made, it's the way to get it done in 2 hours. It'll ferment out real quick because it's pretty much just the best possible mash you could possibly have. Like you're never going to get efficiency like this in your from your mash tun. So as far as really quick beers go, I think you could be extract, to be honest. Lewis didn't really do, and you didn't really do extract, did you?
One or two.
Some of the best beers I've done, like, I'm not doing extract.
I'm considering brewing extract now more at brewery time, less time, so on the weekend, after brew extract.
Oh, just in case you're worried about this thing, growing on the front of the table, we rehydrated the yeast. We didn't do that before. It's good practice to rehydrate the yeast. Most decent yeast will have instructions on the back. Essentially, you just take 100 milliliters of 30-degree water, stick the yeast in there, cover it up. You need to sanitize the crap out of everything. We just use Microcept, which is a scary brewery chemical, but that's because we have it for line cleaning and stuff. You won't have that at home. Just make a strong sanitizer. You can use bleach, pre-boiled water, but if you've got any no-rinse, just make it a little bit stronger than you usually would. You need to put cling film over at the top as well. Sanitize the cling film. Just get your cling film out, duplicate it a few times. With no-rinse, it's fine because there's no refrigerant in it. Definitely do it in something bigger than a ramekin though. Yes. As you can see, this is going a bit rip. Not that great. We're getting relatively close to a hot break, so I'm going to tell you when it happens, so you can come near, but not too near, not so near, so I have to worry about liability. It'll take a little while after you put your malt in, because obviously your malt's a lot cooler, it'll cool the temperature down. But we're coming up to 90. Once we get to about 95-ish, it'll start to wiggle about a bit. That's why you need to keep an eye on it. In no circumstance should you ever leave the beer to boil before it's gone through its hot break. Because it will boil over. You can have it up to there, and if you don't pay attention to it and kind of react when it happens, it will boil over. And then we'll break the thermostat on your boiler, and then your thermostat will only ever have 2 modes, on and not on. Which is great for us, but probably would have been much better had we were not doing it in the kitchen on the same thing. Something that's that later. So again, we'll have talk amongst yourselves, ask me questions about the lecture. I'll give you a shout once it's tested.
Well, let's put it into the
Right. So if you see that, you can't really see, can you? No. Imagine that. Right, never mind. Edit that there. Things to do when your beer goes through its hot break. You've got 2 ways about it. You can get a spray bottle filled with pre-boiled water and just be like, get down. Which is probably the more fun one. But we didn't do that. No. Do it with sanitizer. That sounds ideal. Yeah, I don't really want to use microcent actually. Or you can just turn it off. It's better. Yeah, if you've got space, let it go. It needs to go through this. We talked about it before in the brew share again. We talked about it before. Basically, it's the proteins that are in there, even with this kind of auto mash, let's call it, you're going to end up with loads of proteins that are going to break apart. It's spontaneous coagulation of all the proteins, so everything's just going to go like, all at the same time. It's because it reaches a certain exact 0.000 point something, blah blah blah, 10% degree temperature, and that's just the temperature that happens. So there's an awful lot of it, particularly with dry malt extracts, because it's such an efficient mash. It's pretty much the most hot break you can possibly have. So keep an eye out for that.
The same though.
It better not be. Why should be Carrera forever?
Yeah.
What's about cold sleep? Cold sleep is my
Yeah, so then I'll be it.
If you get it on you, it will hurt a lot. It's like napalm. It's like molten sugar foam, which sounds delicious, but not.
It's just
That's me. Sorry. Irrelevant. Essentially, what we're going to do, past the hot break, you'll be left with kind of a rolling boil after that. Don't go with our hot conditions. You can stick around for it if you want. I would, if I were you, stick around while we go through the thing, because we're going to call it afterwards, but it's going to take an hour from that. So, come and have a chat about your recipe, we'll talk about it, any questions, etc., etc. We'll sort that all out after the hot break. You do that a lot, that's one thing. Oh, this is kind of the first stage in your brewing process where you can kind of tell what your beer is going to look like. Like the head's not going to change colour. So here we've got really dark, kind of tan coloured head, which I like. I think that's going to be nice. But that will stick around. If it's a lighter beer, it will go a little bit darker. You'll get some Maillard reactions going on during the boil as well. So a beer will slightly darken throughout the boil. Ours is already black, so it's not really going to darken much. It might be. Oh. So these are your engines ready to switch it off, but we don't have a spray.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Show it? No, I don't like that. We're not going to like that. We went to the drawing board there and came up with that thing. do it so you don't have to. If you all individually come and have a look at it now, as opposed to as it was before, we've got like a thick layer of foam on top now. Come on, man. Don't stand on that stool. Shut up. Yeah, he's fat.
I've managed to I've mixed that.
Turn it back on again. Yeah, it's a bit like Marmite. Yeah, is that it?
Feels like Marmite red one.
Marmite red one, that's what we're doing. Right, so you're breaking apart now. That's basically a hot breakthrough. It will start turning into kind of much bigger bubbles, less foamy. It helps having that breeze on it as well. Back. Here. Boil over. Really, really messy boil over. Steam so much carafe.
So if you've got the thermostats available,
well, actually, it's like what you're going to need to get out. Yeah, it needs to drop past that kind of magic.
okay.
Another one. Essentially, all the proteins that are going to coagulate will coagulate, and then it will settle back down, and then you'll kind of see liquid again. Once you see liquid again, we'll get to that very soon, hopefully. What I'm going to do with this beer is I'll take so much carafa, which I've never really cold steamed before. It's kept a lot of the smaller stuff in rather than kind of dissolving it down. So I'm going to transfer this from a primary fermentation to a secondary fermentation to leave all that shit behind. So all this stuff around here looks like coffee grounds. I don't want that to go into the bottles with me, so I'm going to give it a week in primary and then a week in secondary. On the side of it, like too well known, but I don't want to say that that's what it is, so I'll just siphon out the all that crap at the bottom into primary fermenter, and then I'll bottle from the secondary. Will you calm down, please? Usually, you get like one big. You have to say go back a little bit. And this is for a 50-litre batch, you can do 23-litre batches of yeast, which is up to there to begin with. That's what I needed to understand. Yeah, well, we didn't mean to. No, it broke after we did the boil over with the stove. And you're like,
no, I thought screw it over back then.
did you?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
No, just because
Got my hand on it.
it was just a vacuum bin before, so it reached like 87 degrees, and it just like, turned itself off.
Good breed. Pretty much there. You've got it all in your teeth. You look like a mess. Right, if you have a look at it now, not too close up to take the boiling out. It's gone right down, you can see liquid again. So as soon as the rest of this kind of turns into that, we'll start our time to boil. You have to remember to time it though. Otherwise, there's no point doing any measurements whatsoever. Has a choice.
You sure? So how much the kitty was £30 away? It was £30. So which one, what are you doing?
Right, hotbreak's over. Time's it?
It is 56 minutes.
First combination, your bittering hops is 9 grams of carafa at 12.5%. Carafa? Why did I say carafa? That's not even a hop. Mosaic at 12.5%. IBU, we'll talk about 12.5 alpha acid. We'll talk about that next week. Huzzah! Onward. You don't really have to stir it in or anything. I like to because I like stirring things, but you don't have to really. Oh, it's good to have a bucket of sanitizer there all the time as well, just in case you drop something. There we go. Everyone happy with doing theirs?
When you start the song,
Yeah.
phone moves.
Yeah. Start time when you put in your first hops. You put in hops. If you end up with more liquid than you need, you can just boil it for ages. You can boil it for an hour. You'll drop it down 20%. So if you end up, you'll need this once you get around to all grain. Sometimes your calculations will go a little bit awry. And you'll have to over-sparge, sparge a lot more, fix a stuck match. You'll end up with a lot more liquid at a much lower gravity than you need. The way of fixing that is, that smells like cinnamon. That's amazing. The way of fixing that is just boiling it without hops for longer before you start your time boil. Evaporate more of it. We've had to do it a bunch of times. Generally speaking, if you end up with the right amount, it should be the right gravity if your efficiency calculations are right. Because you should have got it over elsewhere. It's just about getting the right sugar to liquid ratio. But boiling off is easier. It's difficult to go the other way if you're too low, sorry. If you're really, really low, you go end up with a tiny batch of beer. 50 litres will give you 4.5% beer. If you want to go with something that's a bit more sessionable, you can probably go as high as 18 litres. But again, you just saw the hot break I've done with that in there.
I've got 2 more kilos.
It's not a bad thing to have around the house. For brewing, in the garage, just for if you ever need to top up another kit or another one, half a kilo of DM is quite useful. You can prime with it, you can do many things with it. So everyone's kind of at the same pace. Yeah, it would be a perfect strong, especially if you're 50. Has anyone got their boiler yet?
In the post.
Dan had built one.
I don't say that, but I'm trying to. I'm going to put that in the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit nervous, especially as I know last week.
Yeah.
Just runs the plug.
Yeah, spray bottle.
Yes, spray bottles. In back. That's the most one. Right, so our additions are. The wafter. Yeah, I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to waffling. Time now. So if you want to chat to me about your recipes, now's the time to do it, I guess. But we'll do that over here.